Okay, so imagine you're back in like 17th century England, and you're really struggling to make ends meet. And so you make this just unthinkable choice to sell your children. And now imagine those children are conjoined twins, making them even more valuable in this society already so fascinated by the unusual.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the true story of the Herring family, and that's kind of where our deep dive starts today.
It's just a really heartbreaking story that really just shines a light on the complexity of social dynamics of that time, you know?
Right.
And we're going to look at all sorts of sources today to understand their lives, like historical accounts, court documents, even 17th century art, just to get a sense of these monstrous births and human exhibition and the very concept of ownership back then.
Yeah, ownership. Right. And to guide us, we have Dr. Whitney Dirks, author of Monstrosity, Bodies and Knowledge in Early Modern England.
Fantastic book.
So what drew you to this story?
Well, I think the Herring twins, Aquila and Priscilla, they really represent kind of a microcosm of so many social issues of the time. You've got poverty, exploitation, the rise of mass media, and this incredible fascination with the unusual. It's all wrapped up in this really tragic tale, which gives us a unique window into how society viewed and treated those who were different.
Yeah, wow. So let's go back in time then.
Okay.
Paint a picture of 17th century England for us.
Right.
What were people's attitudes towards physical differences?
Well, so you got to think about a time when science was in its infancy. People were really searching for explanations for things they didn't understand, and a lot of times that meant religion or superstition.
Hmm.
And so these monstrous births, as they were called, they were seen as omens, warnings from God, punishments for sin.
So like a real fear of the unknown.
Oh, absolutely. And even the language used to describe these differences reflects that. I mean, you see words like monster, deformed, ill-shaped, terms that we would never use today, you know? And then there's this whole idea of maternal impression, like a mother's thoughts or experiences during pregnancy could actually imprint on the developing fetus, causing physical abnormalities.
Oh, wow. Imagine that pressure
Oh, yeah.
on pregnant women.
Yeah.
It's unsettling to think about.
Absolutely. And this wasn't just a rural phenomenon either. Like even in London, you see this. The heart of England, there was a whole market for the display of human and animal oddities. People were just drawn to this spectacle, eager to get a glimpse of the unusual, the extraordinary.
So it was almost like entertainment then. Like
Yeah.
they paid to see these individuals.
It was a mix. I mean, it was this mix of curiosity and fear. I mean, think about public executions, which were still pretty common back then.
Oh, right.
People are really drawn to that, right? The macabre, the spectacle of life and death, and in a way, displaying these, quote, monstrous births tapped into that. It let people confront their fears, I don't know, grapple with the unknown, even maybe reaffirm their own sense of normalcy in the face of such a difference.
Right, right. So let's bring it back to the twins.
Okay.
They were born in rural Somerset, impoverished parents. Tell us more about how they were caught up in this world of public display.
Sure. So Aquila and Priscilla were born conjoined. And at the time, that would have been incredibly rare. I mean, shocking. And their birth just instantly attracted all this attention from locals first, and then it spread. People came from miles around, driven by curiosity, maybe fear or desire, again, to gawk at something unusual.
And so the family, being so poor,
Right.
saw this opportunity
Yeah.
to maybe make some money.
It seems so, yes. And we have to remember that there was no legal framework protecting these individuals. The idea of informed consent, non-existent. There were no laws governing the display of human oddities. So from our modern perspective, of course, we look at this and it's like, this is exploitation. But you really have to consider the context, the historical context in which all of this unfolded.
Right, yeah. And it's so easy to judge from, our perspective today, but when you're living with desperate poverty, facing starvation, maybe the lines get blurred.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this takes us to the ethical question here, right?
Yeah.
Were the Herrings just trying to survive, just trying to make the best of this difficult situation? Or were they actively exploiting their children for profit?
It's a question with no easy answer,
Yeah.
and one that I'm sure will continue to haunt us as we dig deeper into this story.
And it does, and this is where things take a tragic turn. The twins were just 2 weeks old when they were taken from their parents, and this sets off this whole chain of events that really exposes the dark underbelly of this fascination with the unusual.
Taken from their parents. Wow, what happened?
Well, so we've got two conflicting accounts here, both kind of pointing to people eager to capitalize on the twins' unique situation. One version claims their father, Richard Herring, he sold the twins out of desperation to their landlord, a man named Henry Walrand.
Hmm.
And court documents actually describe Walrand as having this evil get-rich-quick scheme, suggesting a deliberate intent to exploit the situation.
So he basically saw these infants as a way to make money.
It seems that way, yeah. The other version suggests Walrand just abducted the girls, taking advantage of the fact that, legally, no one really knew who owned these monstrous births.
I can't imagine. Just to have your babies ripped from you, did their mother just accept this?
No, not at all. Mary Herring fought like crazy to get her kids back. She got help from a prominent family, the Phelps, and even managed to get this legal document demanding the twins be returned. And this document, it still exists. It's a real piece of this heartbreaking story.
So there was an actual legal battle then?
Yes, but whether justice was served is debatable. Sadly, the twins died really young, at just 1 month old. One passed away, and then the other just a day later. But even though they died, the legal case went on for an agonizing 4 years.
Wow. What happened during that time? What about Walrand? Surely he didn't keep profiting even after they died.
Well, this is where it gets really disturbing. Walrand had their tiny bodies embalmed and put them on display in London. He just kept profiting from their tragedy. It's shocking. And all this time, Mary Herring was still fighting. She wanted justice for what happened to her babies.
And what was the outcome? Was he ever held accountable?
The judge did condemn Walrand, calling his actions inhumane and exploitative. But despite all that, and clear evidence, he was never actually convicted. He kept his position of power, and it seems like he escaped any real consequences.
What a miscarriage of justice.
So, do we know how this impacted Mary?
We don't have a lot of information about her life afterward, but there are these ceramic plates from the time, mass-produced with images of the twins on them. And it's interesting, they don't just show the girls, they also have figures who look like Walrand and Phelps on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a commentary on their roles in all of this.
Ceramic plates. That's so strange. What do these plates tell us about what the public thought?
Well, they kind of show this complex reaction. Like, yes, people condemned Walrand, but there was also some criticism of Phelps for not helping Mary enough. It seems like public opinion was pretty nuanced.
Right, right. They acknowledge the exploitation, but also recognize how complicated the situation was.
Right, exactly. And these plates are like this powerful reminder that even back then in the 17th century, there was a sense of social justice.
People understood the difference between right and wrong. These plates give a voice to the voiceless, in a way. They echo that outrage that Mary Herring must have felt.
Wow, yeah. And it highlights another important part of this whole story, how mass-produced printing was shaping how the public saw and consumed these stories about the unusual. I mean, this was a time when more and more people were reading and print was getting cheaper.
Oh, absolutely. So, think about it. Before the printing press, this would have just stayed local gossip. But with pamphlets, woodcuts, ballads, suddenly this story could travel all over. It fueled curiosity, debates, and honestly, a lot of morbid fascination.
It's like those sensationalized headlines today, right?
Yeah.
Meant to grab your attention and sell papers.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's not gossip. It's people's lives just laid bare for the world to see.
And it wasn't just lower classes who were fascinated. Even the rich and powerful were caught up in this desire for the unusual. It's almost like a parallel story, the life of Geoffrey Hudson. He was a dwarf in the court of Queen Henrietta Maria.
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of him. Wasn't he really small?
He was only about 18 inches tall for a lot of his life. Perfectly proportioned, just incredibly small. And Queen Henrietta Maria treated him like both a courtier and a kind of, a living doll. She'd dress him in these fancy clothes and showcase him at court.
So instead of being displayed for the public, he was a curiosity for the elite.
In a way, yeah. And again, you see that element of exploitation. We have all these portraits of him, often with the Queen or other court members.
It's interesting how both the twins and Geoffrey Hudson ended up being objects of fascination and ultimately exploitation.
Yeah.
One for the masses, the other for the Queen. It really says a lot about how fascinated people were, and still are, with anything unusual.
It makes you think, doesn't it? That desire to categorize and commodify difference, it's something that's always been there.
Yeah, it's easy to think, oh, we've come so far from the 17th century, but have we? I mean, how do we treat those who are different today? Are we still, putting people in boxes, making them into something to consume?
It's a good question, and one we should all be asking ourselves. Look at the way we take in media, the stories we choose, the people we celebrate, the people we push aside. Are we really embracing difference? Or are we just drawn to the spectacle of it all?
Going through these stories, what strikes me is how it's not the physical differences that are monstrous, it's the exploitation. It's taking away someone's control, their dignity. That's the real horror.
Absolutely. And we can't forget that the twins and Jeffrey Hudson, they're not just isolated cases. They're part of this much larger pattern. It's about how society views difference.
So what can we learn from all this? How do we make sure history doesn't repeat itself?
Well, I think it starts with empathy and understanding. We need to really challenge our own assumptions about difference, question the stories we've been told, and really listen to those who've been silent.
And not just listen, right? Amplify those voices, learn from them, work to build a world where everyone feels valued for who they are.
Exactly, and don't forget, history is not just facts and dates. It shows us who we are. By looking back, we can understand the present better and hopefully make the future more just and compassionate.
This deep dive has been incredible, eye-opening, really.
Mm.
It's a reminder that progress is not always a straight line. We move forward, we stumble back, but we have to keep moving, keep questioning, keep learning. We have to work for a world where difference is celebrated, not exploited.
Beautifully said.
Mm.
And I think the key is it's not just about celebrating difference, it's about recognizing everyone's inherent worth.
What a powerful thought. The stories of the Herring twins and Jeffrey Hudson may seem like they're from a different world, but they ask questions we're still facing today. Let's all try to build a world where being different isn't a reason for exploitation, but a source of strength and richness. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.